Let's talk about the Eurozone, a vale of tears, as we all know. What's going to happen is highly unpredictable. It is uncharted territory. But in the case of borrowers in a country which leaves the euro and has bonds or loans outstanding, it is not necessarily all bad news. First of all, you have to look at what is the governing law of the bond or loan. If it's the domestic law of the departing country, that is bad news. But of course, in the international capital markets, many of those loans and bonds are actually governed by either English or New York law. Secondly, you have to look at where the loan or bond says payment is actually to be made. Again, if it's to be made within the departing country, that's bad news. But in fact, again, in the international capital markets, most loans and bonds will provide that payment of a euro-denominated obligation must be made in a principal financial centre of the remaining eurozone. So essentially, typically, Frankfurt or Paris, or indeed London as the centre of foreign exchange. The third thing that's important to look at is the specific contractual provisions which should normally provide that a euro-denominated obligation must be paid off in euros. So if the borrower in fact is in a country which no longer has the euro, it can, of course, go out into the foreign exchange markets and use its drachma, lira, peseta, whatever it may be, to purchase the requisite amounts of euro to discharge its liabilities. And the exchange rate risk of that falls on the borrower because 100 euros obligation must be paid with 100 euros, not some lesser drachma equivalent. The third thing to bear in mind, though, is that in the case of a departure, the departing government is bound to introduce exchange controls, stopping borrowers and individuals from exporting their local currency. However, if the borrower in fact conducts business elsewhere in Europe and therefore has euro-denominated revenues continuing to be generated, it will, of course, be able to use those to pay off euro-denominated liabilities. Whether those are sufficient in amount obviously will depend on a case-by-case basis. So as I say, while the whole thing is terribly unpredictable and a vale of tears, lenders should not necessarily panic. They have to look at the terms of their particular loan or bond to see what protection they may have, but there should be some in there.